Welcome back, everybody, to the High Conflict Co-Parenting Podcast with Brooke Olsen. This week's episode is number 320, Why Your Relationship Breakup Could Be the Best Thing for Your Relationships Going Forward. This is with Bryan Powers. Bryan, I'm going to let you introduce yourself a little bit as to what you do and kind of how you got here, if you would.
Yeah, that's quite a headline, right? I mean, why, the breakup could be the best thing, but in my experience, that is very true. And so again, my name is Bryan Power. My wife and I did go through a crazy breakup, if you will, in 2024. That really kind of stemmed from a lot of childhood trauma that we were kind of was playing out in our relationship and our lives, and ultimately would lead to a breakup, restraining order to the point where it was all for emotional safety. It was never a violent threat at all, but there was so much chaos, so much emotional distress. She would actually reach for that as a tool to kind of get some space, and that space would actually prove to be an incredible opportunity for us to both grow, for us to both change, for us to both learn, and actually come back together, as fate would have it. In our case, we were able to come back together and actually make it work pretty well. So today we share a pretty good relationship because of this incredibly terrible breakup, if you will. But because I think we did it right, we did a lot of things right in that regard at that time. We're able to kind of move forward in a way that's been a blessing. So that's what landed me here.
And you do some coaching work here as well, right?
I do, yeah. So through this entire experience, I actually learned a lot about what's called attachment theory. And I came across a video by Thais Gibson, Thais Gibson, out of Canada, who was talking about attachment theory. It was probably about a month or so before I kind of got kicked out of the house, if you will. But I was fascinated by the work that she was doing and some of the things that she was saying. She was on a podcast with Mel Robbins out of Boston, and about an hour and a half into that thing, I was just like, I'm hooked. I saw a lot of answers. I thought there was a lot of meat to that discussion, and I really just wanted to delve into that work further. And so I did, even though the relationship kind of ended with my wife at the time. That was the work that I kind of continued to do and continued to learn about, to the point where I was just enthralled by it. And now I actually try to help others learn the program as well. It's called Integrated Attachment Theory, and it's really a six-pillar program that helps you heal your attachment style, move you from the unhealthy attachment styles into a secure, healthy attachment style, and gives you some tools to really work with in a relationship. Tools that I never had before, tools that I finally can, look at and go, wow, this is how sometimes a relationship should work. This is pretty cool. And so I'm just really blessed to have gone through that entire experience and learned some of this stuff. So I love the opportunity to kind of maybe share some of that with other people now. It's just a blessing.
Attachment theory is a conversation that we've had on a number of our podcasts, and I'm fascinated by it because in its structure is pretty simple. It's simple to understand, it's simple to break down, and it's profound in its ramifications once you begin to understand it. And when we start to talk about attachment theories and attachment styles, we want to understand, right, that these are all on a spectrum and they're not just linear by nature.
Oh yeah, very much so. In fact, I hate sometimes even the whole idea of putting those categories together a little bit. But I think the most important thing is understanding them at some level, and then delving into the things that are behind it. What's really causing these attachment styles to kind of be a little bit off, a little bit damaged, if you will. Us kind of doing things in a way that are just not healthy and proper. That's the core of it, and that's really the most important thing is understanding your attachment style. It's nice to know, but at the end of the day, yeah, it's very linear. It can absolutely change and kind of move. And you can actually go from an unhealthy attachment style to the secure attachment style through the work. Attachment style is just, it's the way we've learned how to kind of do it. And since we've learned it one way, we can actually unlearn it and learn a different way. So I love that idea that we can actually change that and become very healthy and learn how to do this proper. So yeah.
Yeah, and when we talk about secure attachment, it's something that for most of us who have landed in some of these high conflict arenas, um, haven't experienced by and large. We haven't experienced it from our families of origin, which is where our attachment styles originate. And we've replicated relationships through those attachment styles that have ultimately blown up in our faces. And I know from my personal experience and from the experience of most of my um, clients, there is a trail of unsuccessful relationships that we could point directly back to how these attachment styles work against one another. But when we begin to understand another person's attachment style, we understand how that attachment style triggers our attachment style. That's when we get to interrupt the dance, right?
Yeah, no, that knowledge is very helpful to understand, like you just said, your partners and your own, and really kind of how you're both operating a little bit and the way your kind of your coping mechanisms and the way your brain is working a little bit to kind of navigate the relationship itself. When you understand those things, it's a game changer. And until you really get a lot of this is subconscious, just like you said. It's really it's the underlying subconscious that's driving the train, if you will. And until we really tap into that idea and understand that and really see that for ourselves, it's really hard to change, and we will stay stuck in this cycle and go from relationship to relationship a lot of times. Or even if we stay stuck in one relationship, it's not fulfilling per se. It's just we're kind of just getting through it, but it's not that ultimate wonderful connection, really great communication, all our needs are met. It's not that one that we're dreaming of. We kind of get into a relationship, maybe we're with that person 10, 15, 20 years, but sometimes it's almost a loveless relationship. It's just kind of a relationship of a convenience, if you will. And it's hard to kind of move on. And obviously you care about that person, but the relationship itself just never seems to be at that high level. And that's the difference is, to me, is learning how to do a relationship, not just so that you stay together, but that you thrive through that relationship, that you really have an incredible connection and are able to really, feel fulfilled in that relationship. That's the key to a really wonderful relationship. And that just takes some practice, some skills, some knowledge that a lot of times we just don't have. So
And secure attachment. Let's stop, or let's start right at kind of what I consider when I'm talking about it at the midpoint. That is the place of stuff is together here internally, and that means that I feel seen, I feel heard. Um, my needs are being acknowledged, and that I've got a partner that cares to consider all of that and has got my back, that I can count on that person. And the origins of that, if we go backwards, either happen or they don't happen in our families of origin. And if we haven't had that sense of being seen, heard, honored, and that somebody's got my back that I can count on no matter what, um, something's lost in the wiring. And because that's a vacant point, we're always searching that out in other, and other can't provide that. It becomes an internal game of filling that by ourselves. Somebody else isn't going to fix that for us, right?
that's right. No, you're 100% right, Brooke. You got to work on yourself and discover that where that kind of where that went wrong a little bit, right? And where that childhood experiences kind of delved into a bad area. And yeah, now you've got this subconscious, perception about things, about relationships, and the way you kind of look at yourself, even and how that's kind of working. Until we heal ourselves, until we do the work and learn how to do this and heal ourselves really internally, then yeah, we can delve into the unhealthy attachment styles. The secure attachment style is very well regulated emotionally, like you said, very heard. They kind of grew up maybe with some good parenting, and they did have a lot of that. Yeah, that stuff where they were able to kind of be nurtured properly in a way that, yeah, they're feeling pretty secure as an adult, and they know how to kind of communicate better. They know how to set some boundaries and do some of these things. But I would say that a lot of us haven't been there. A lot of us didn't come through that, and even those that did can also still delve into some. You can have really great parents, really great. Absolutely, but still kind of somewhere along the line develop some core wounds, some sort of abandonment issue or some sort of issue, if you will, that can also provide you with some dysfunction, if you will, some misperception. So even if great parents doesn't mean you're going to always come out just right.
Right, because just because we had good parents doesn't mean we make good choices and partners going down the line. There's a higher probability of that happening. But when we're faced with somebody that we're attaching to, that's dysregulated, that's um, on one of these arenas of anxious, preoccupied, fearful, avoidant, dismissive, avoidant, whatever the attachment style is, and we don't know what that is or that looks like, it can rattle our cage and disorient us off of that secure piece with some of the gaslighting stuff that goes on and the manipulations that happen in those relationships. So um to your point again, yeah, just because we had good doesn't mean we're going to not be challenged by this. But I think, when I talk about this, I talk about it on a spectrum. I talk about, that secure um, attachment being, that middle piece. And as we go in each direction, we're headed toward dysregulation. We're headed deeper into dysfunction, and we're headed maybe sometimes into the arenas of personality disorder and stuff like that, which by definition are attachment disorders, right? But even I think when we understand that, as we move kind of in that avoidant direction, we're headed kind of toward that narcissistic kind of a conversation that I hate to have. But that's kind of the direction that it moves. And then when we move um, in that anxious, preoccupied direction, we're leaning more into that borderline type of behavior, and that always anxious, always looking for where things are in order to be able to orient to it. And the thing that I think I've found is that all of these, um, with the exception of the secure attachment, these other attachment styles, at their very core, are anxiety driven. Whether it's avoidant, what are you avoiding? Why are you avoiding it? Because I'm anxious about attaching to that. That's is problematic for me. So I look at these from the standpoint of um, they're two sides of the same coin.
They really are. Yeah, I agree. It's just, you know, to me, they're just different coping mechanisms that that person developed. And, one person developed it one way and the other person kind of developed sometimes the opposite survival method, if you will, but it worked for them. And so, so when you talk about a dismissive, that they learned how to detach better. They learned how to kind of really isolate more and kind of deal with a lot of the emotions on their own. If they
Hmm.
feel like emotions at all. But emotions are bad, and so we don't feel those typically. But if we do, we're going to really kind of deal with it on our own. And they love a lot of space. They fear greatly fear being trapped. They're not great with commitment. So a lot of these things, those are just coping mechanisms based out of fear and anxiety. That's right. And
Hmm.
so on the flip side, you have the person who is very anxious and who loves connection and who hates to be alone and wants to be connected to the other person all the time and really just needs that to kind of regulate themselves. But looking outside themselves to regulate, and that's also not a very healthy approach either. So these things they're just patterns that we've learned a lot of times through our childhoods, in a way that just kind of served us as kids trying to learn how to survive and get through that experience. And it did work in our childhood. It did help us survive. But now we're taking that same pattern into our adult lives, into these relationships where they're no longer serving us. And that pattern, and until we figure that out and break that pattern, a lot of times we're just set in that pattern and we're just going to keep doing it until we kind of fix it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've found, and I think you have as well in relationship, and I'm curious because I can speak to my own relationships, but did you find that the two of you had opposite attachment styles?
Yeah, so my wife and I are what I would call, fearful avoidance. We're kind of in that middle zone where sometimes we can lean dismissive, sometimes we can lean anxious. At the time of our trouble, though, and in our relationship, my wife definitely was leaning a lot more dismissive. She was definitely leaning, isolates a lot, loves the hyper independent, definitely needs a lot of time to process the emotions on her own. And the more she did that, the more it kind of fueled my anxious side, where all of a sudden that when she would pull away, that would trigger my little bit of anxiety. I have a big abandonment issue for me. It's a fear of abandonment is a big one for me. And so when somebody pulls away, I start to think maybe this is going to end. I start to get, that subconscious nervous system activates, and all of a sudden I'm in an anxious zone of, trying to attach and hold on to it. And the more I tried to hold on, the more, again, she wanted that space. And so that was the dynamic that actually led to our falling out and ultimately led to that restraining order that I talked about in the beginning here. Because we were so polar opposites, the more she pulled away, the more I tried to attach, the more she needed to pull away. And it just became so dysfunctional. And that's why when I found Thais's work and the attachment stuff, I was like, wow, that is us to a T. And I was so impressed with the idea that this is normal, if you will, in a sense that we're not the only ones dealing with this unhealthy dance. But at
Hmm.
least somebody kind of could recognize it, kind of put a face to it, put a label to it, if you will, put some information to it where I could go, wow, okay, that makes sense. And I started to understand why we were where we were. And so that really made a big difference in everything.
Yeah. Mhm. Stalking, right? Where are you? What are you doing? Where did you go? Who are you with? Why aren't you here?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't to that point, but yes, it can get to that point for
Yeah,
some,
right,
for
right.
sure. To her, it felt like that. Anything I did felt like I was stalking her. Anything I did, because she was so wanting so much space that anytime I came close at all, it seemed like I was crossing that boundary for her. So, and that's where it just became confusing because I was like, wow, I couldn't even sometimes have just a normal conversation or try to do some things that seemed somewhat normal to me was crossing a line for her, and that would just send us back into into terrible emotional states. It
Right.
was yeah, pretty tough.
And the fact that you said that she felt that way, that's not what you were doing, but that's what they felt. I mean, that's the intensity that comes along when these attachment styles are triggered, right? And it's like I gotta go or I gotta get. And the the cognitive piece goes offline, right? And I think, I was introduced to attachment theory years ago, through somebody that directed me to Amir Levine's book, Attached. And the exercises that were in that book were like, oh, these make perfect sense in terms of matching stuff up and understanding it. Because when I go back to my early days with my first wife, um, we were on totally different sides of the spectrum, and we were way outside. I mean, from myself, m- my avoidant behavior was not small, and her anxious, preoccupied behavior was not small, and we were in this dance of, where can I find my space and do what I'm doing, and I was not doing it in a healthy way, and she was on the other side of that, trying to chase that down in not a healthy way. And neither one of us understood anything about what this was about. And again, it wasn't until I was in my second marriage and it was coming undone that I started to get a handle on this, and the understanding of that, to your point, and to what we're talking about in this podcast, is understanding is can be the absolutely best thing that ever happened to you.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
But it
Uh,
isn't, it's not without pain.
Yeah, no, unfortunately. Now, I mean, if you can do it along the way, if you can see the red flags and catch it earlier, then God bless you. That's incredible. Um, my coaching practice is called My Relationship Fail, or even Make Your Relationship Fail. And it's not because we want to make a relationship fail. It's just that I understand that sometimes failure is what it takes for us to finally learn the lessons that we need to. And sometimes that's why I say that breakup, that time away, that time alone can really be the best thing. You can find yourself again. You can really learn these things and look at yourself. How am I showing up improperly? What are the wounds that I'm carrying that are actually causing problems in my relationship? And that failure, unfortunately, that pain is a great motivator to learn and to change and to actually be willing to look at ourselves. Because in the past, my wife, what all started this funny thing is she literally challenged me to see a therapist. And at that point I said, okay, fine, I will go see a therapist. But I challenged her to see a therapist as well, because in my mind, she was the one with all the issues. And in her mind, I was the one with all the issues. And so, but it took us falling apart before we could both look at ourselves and realize that we both had some issues that we really need to work on. And unfortunately, that is sometimes what it takes. But at least if you are in that particular time right now, if you're going through a breakup or anything like that, please understand that that can be a blessing, and that absolutely is a time to learn and grow and change. And at the end of that is a rainbow that's just waiting to happen. It's just a beautiful experience if you do it right. And sometimes, as in my case, you could even put that relationship back together. And if not, then at least you're prepared for the next relationship, and that relationship can be a beautiful experience. So either way, I think these tough times that we face and go through are really not meant to break us. They're really meant to bless us, and that's what I've experienced.
Yeah, and along those lines, Brian, I think that the opportunity as a parent, if you were in one of these dysfunctional relationships that had these opposing attachment styles, or these attachment styles that were causing the distress within the relationship, you're raising children in that container. And the children don't have an opportunity in that container to find anything that remotely um, resembles a secure attached style. It's just not available. And to the listeners, if you're going through this, finding that stability, I think, is the most important piece that you can do. And understanding your attachment style, I think, is at the foundation of rebuilding the internal components for you, but also establishing a template that the children can begin to experience that in a way that they never have before. So we're instilling, at least on some rudimental level, the software for them, or the hardware even, for them to be able to build on this with one parent. I've always said that having one good parent is good enough. It's not ideal, but it is good enough. Not having one good parent is catastrophic. So, what I'd like to get from you is some feedback in terms of, let's start with each one of these attachment styles as you see it in your clients, as you see it in your practice, as you saw it in your marriage. That what are the foundational pieces in each one of them? How do they express, and how can people begin to explore this on their own, not from a place of self-judgment, but but of an inquiry of, what is this, why is this, and how can I change this?
Yeah, I mean, I truly believe at the core of all this are those core wounds and those mental tapes that we're playing. And Tice Gibson said something once that broke my. I was just like fascinated by this. That 95 to 97% of our decisions are made by the subconscious, and most importantly, that the conscious cannot outpower or overwill the subconscious. And so I said, wow, that's pretty wild. And I actually experienced that while all this was going on, because consciously I kept wanting to stop things. Consciously, I knew I was confident. I know, like, I'll be okay. Consciously, I knew all the good things, but subconsciously, as things really started to fall apart, it became a train wreck, and I really couldn't stop it from happening. And so I realized that the subconscious was extremely powerful. And then, yeah, I look back in my childhood. I came from a very dysfunctional childhood, right? So my abandonment wound came from my father. My parents were basically divorced when I was born. My father battled addiction and was in and out of my childhood constantly. And when he was in there, it was just a lot of chaos and a lot of craziness. And so we also moved around a lot my first 10 years of my life. And so I had really no stability, if you will, for the first 10 years of my life. And so I developed a lot of these core wounds of feeling unsafe, fear of abandonment, feeling being unloved, not good enough. All these types of wounds would ultimately play out in my life to kind of shape the way I was doing my own relationships as an adult. And then, yeah, the categories can be a little bit more. We can talk about those if you like. The anxious side, the fearful, avoidant, and then the dismissive side. Those three have some of their own wounds, and again, mostly their own coping mechanisms and the way they've kind of learned how to kind of handle these things, and that's what they take into their adult relationships. If you like to, yeah, it sounds like you may be interested. May want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, in just a second I do, but just kind of rotate back here for a minute in terms of, the establishment of the base notes for this. The subconscious running the show is our core belief systems.
That's right.
I think in order to unpack ourselves in this manner, there's got to be a challenge for us to challenge the belief system in and of itself. So, where did that come from? And was that true? And was there malicious intent, or was there just lack of consciousness in the process? And each one of those inquiries takes us in multiple different directions in this exploration. But I think in order to be in relationship, if we've done those explorations, then we can start to repattern the neural pathways for the belief system, because that's all a belief system is a neural pathway, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and that's scientific. They've actually discovered that you can create new neural pathways through neurogenesis, and then you can also, change a lot of those old patterns, and and those. So that's scientifically based that it can absolutely be done, and that's what I love about this program is like, yeah, you're not stuck in these unhealthy patterns at all. You can absolutely change them. So there is hope that this can change, and we can do it, and you can absolutely move from the unhealthy, attachment styles to a healthy style. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that, when we start to do that inquiry and we start to repattern those for ourselves, the subconscious becomes conscious, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely. But again, I think even once you reprogram that subconscious, it becomes automatic. It's like that automatic pilot. You put that plane on autopilot, and it just does its thing now. And that's the great thing about it is once we kind of retrain the brain a little bit, and we are putting that healthy information, that goes into the brain properly. Now all of a sudden we're doing things in a much healthier way, and we don't even have to think about it as much, because
Yeah, well,
uh,
we've reprogrammed it long enough that it becomes part of
yeah,
the background.
exactly. Yeah,
But
it becomes part of us. Yep.
I think that inquiry, at least for me in relationship now, when my partner and I've chosen a partner that we're a little bit different on our attachment styles. We're both a lot healthier, but we're still in
Yeah.
these arenas. And understanding that the inquiry for me is, so what's behind that reaction? What's behind that piece? And rather than coming into a judgment of it or chasing it down or requiring something back to settle my own system, I can sit back and go, she's got something else going on here.
Yeah.
And I can ask a question about that, or I can make a request from that place, but I don't have to chase it down. That's her process. It's got nothing to do with me. And we have a tendency to make it about us, right?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things I started to say to myself, and forgive my language, but I used to say like, "Don't let her shit be my shit," and that's hard to do sometimes. Yeah, we definitely start to look at it and take it as if it's because of us. And again, what does a child learn? A child thinks that everything is because of them, and so in our childhood,
Hmm?
we think that all the dysfunction in the world and everything that's good or bad, if you will, in our surroundings is because of us. And so if my partner is now acting out in a way that's, kind of a certain style or so, she's doing something that way, it may trigger that childhood thought of, oh, well, this must be because of me. This is my fault. This is something that I'm doing or what have you. And we can certainly look at ourselves. And again, it's all subconscious as to like, I'm to blame because of that. But it's not always the case, right? We know that it's their case. They have their own issues, that we have our issues. And that's what we have to address in this whole program. And that's what I love is we stopped trying to fix the other person. We started to realize we have to fix ourselves. We can't fix the other person. We can only fix ourselves. And through fixing ourselves, we can often bring our partners with us, and that healing can, overflow, if you will, into other areas of our lives and other people that are in our lives. But until we heal ourselves, we just really stay stuck.
Yeah, and we're sticking our um, genetic coding in that repetitive pattern going forward as well. Epigenetically, we're kind of delegating our kids to the same outcomes.
Yeah, if we don't change it, absolutely. That's one of the things you were talking about the kids and stuff. That's one of the things that really started to trigger a lot of our issues was our parenting style and our differences in parenting. And so that was a huge trigger for us. And so, but the healing that we got from that now and the way we handle each other now, and that we do parent a lot differently. And my wife has come along, not saying I was perfect or anything before, but she has come along a lot of the ways I like to think about parenting and really connecting with the kids, really kind of letting their voice be heard more, and really kind of just a different experience than we were doing before. It's been huge. It's a huge help. And kids are challenging, kids are going to push buttons and challenge us in ways that we never realized before. And I think they bring out a lot of our wounds, right? And in that regard, they're going to show us where we're weak. And all of a sudden, and the thing is, if we don't fix it though, then our kids are going to have to deal with it. The issues that I don't fix for me, I'm going to pass on to my kids. And so,
Mhm.
as much as I can, I want to heal as much as I can, be the best parent I can possibly be, and really change some of these negative behaviors in the way I was doing things so that I don't pass this on to them. I want my kids to come out and be young adults and be able to have good relationships, from the get go, and not have to go through a lot of what my wife and I, had to go through to kind of get here. Right. I wish this information was taught, early in life, when kids are teenagers, when they're really starting to date. To me, this is stuff that they absolutely should be learning in their early teens before they really start learning how to date and do all that stuff,
Well,
because it's a game changer.
what if we started when they were 3 or
Oh,
2?
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
that's really the point of the parenting piece, right? Because what we're trying to do is instill a sense of how to do relationship through our parenting style, and that shows up in the attachment style organically at that point, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. You would have less to deal with the dysfunction. You'd be talking to a lot more secure kids when you teach this than you would be talking to insecure attachment styles. But yeah, I mean, I just think the idea of letting that be known and being able to see this in a healthy way, whether you're secure or at that point dealing with some insecure attachment style stuff, you would be able to get that information, and that could literally be a game changer as to how you go forward in that relationship. But yeah, obviously, if we've been doing a good job parenting, we're going to have hopefully a lot more healthy kids growing up, and in their early teens and 20s, they're going to be able to naturally have better relationships. But I do think that that's definitely a challenge, right? It's definitely a challenge. And again, even if we are healthy parents, sometimes those kids can sometimes develop that little bit of
Absolutely.
insecure attachment style. So sometimes it may be good to just point it out to them before they go into this. But that's the work I'd love to see. I'd love to see this just introduced to more young people, and just get this information out to them, because they could save a lot of heartache, a lot of pain, and really kind of really set themselves up for a much better life, if you will. Really have a lot more security, better connections with their friends, family members, and spouses. And what a difference that could make in the quality of your life as you age in time, right? Instead of having to kind of figure this out the hard way, like Brooke and I here have had to do.
Okay, kids do challenges, and when they challenge us, they bring out our um, those little triggers that we start to react from this background, right? And when we move into a good, connected, authoritative type of a parenting style, we're communicating to our kids through secure attachment. But in this arena with high conflict, that isn't their continuum. That isn't there all of the time, and it can be there with us. But when a parent is going through this, and I was talking about earlier, Brian, the inquiry piece. And if we look at the children through the eyes of it being a reflection of us, which they really are, because that's how we're taking in the information, then the same inquiry that I was talking about with a partner becomes that same inquiry with that child. And when I talk about it being a mirror, the sensations that I'm having with my partner are the same sensations my partner's having. When I'm having an internal sensation with a conversation with a child, they're having that same sensation, right? It's a mirror that we're dancing from. And when the inquiry comes from what is it that's driving that for that child? Why is that child feeling anxious? Why is that child feeling insecure? why is this occurring for that child? And I reflect back to what I'm doing in being unsettled or dysregulated or whatever, and I make that correction. That happens organically with the other person, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely, for sure.
So the understanding, and I'm going to turn this over to you here in a second, but the understanding of these attachment styles is such a rich inquiry for that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the thing I love about this is it's not just about our spouses. It is about our family members, brothers, sisters, parents, and if you're a parent like I am, your kids. And for me, that's our motivation. My wife and I are motivated to heal and do the best we can, in dealing with our own wounds and moving forward in that regard, so that we can be the best parents possible, and we can recognize in our kids some of the things that they're now maybe experiencing through our own dysfunctional stuff over the few years there. Yeah, and start to see that, and we're a family of healing right now. We're a family that's really doing things differently, and learning how to kind of really do better. And yeah, again, my dream is that my kids will be well adjusted, well emotionally adjusted, confident, cool, uh, emotionally balanced, young adults as they move into that. That's our goal. As long as my kids are in my house, I'm going to do everything I can to kind of move them in that direction, and I do that best by example, by living it and kind of doing it there. And this program, yeah, has been a game changer for me to recognize this stuff and then begin to put the pieces together. And then the tools that I've learned with the integrated attachment theory program, the 6 pillars to me have been a game changer as far as our relationship goes. So now my wife and I have a much healthier relationship. Guess what? My kids get to see that as well. They get to see how parents and how a real healthy, good relationship actually works. And and how to do that a little bit better. And so my hope is that they'll learn that, and eventually, yeah, they'll forget about some of the dysfunctional stuff we were doing before, and they'll be able to kind of just focus on the healthy stuff we're doing now, and that'll be more prevalent in their lives than the other stuff. But
Talk about the 6 pillars.
yeah, the 6 pillars, game changers. Number one is your core wounds. Those are those, subconscious thoughts that we have: fear of abandonment, fear of being trapped, fear of betrayal, unsafe, all these, fear of being alone, all these different core wounds, core beliefs that we have that are driving the train that really cause problems. So we got to work on those. Number one. Number two is our needs. We have to really uncover what our true needs are. What do I really need in life to be fulfilled, happy, feel good about my day every day, and then learn how to fulfill those needs predominantly on our own. All right, not outsourcing my needs to other people. Learning how to fill my own. That makes it a lot more control and a lot more possible that I'm going to get those needs met. Number three is my emotions. Right? How do we deal with our emotions? Emotions aren't a bad thing. Emotions are just information, and they're telling us something. Anger is not really a bad thing. If somebody did something bad to me, or if I was in a bad area where I had some guys wanting to attack me, might need to get a little angry, But if I'm
Right.
angry over something small, where my wife maybe doesn't put the cup in the dishwasher or something, it's like, okay, why am I really that angry about that? Is that something that I should be angry at? No, it may be that I feel disrespected. I may feel unloved. I may feel she doesn't care about me, and that's why I'm now triggered, and that's why I'm upset. It's not about the cup being put in the dishwasher. That's nothing. That's a big deal, but I'm triggered because I don't feel loved, respected, or something like that. That makes a huge difference. So that's the emotions. How do we deal with that? I know you got a question. Go ahead.
That internal conversation is crazy, isn't it? It's
Oh
like
yeah,
the bed's only half made, or the thing's only half done, or whatever. And what is this about? Rather than just picking up and going, "Oh, I can fix this," and just do it,
yeah.
right? But there's that internal dialogue that gets in the way that starts to get traction in
Yeah.
all of this stuff.
Yeah, and it's not,
Crazy,
and,
Nathan.
and I deal with it. My wife, I laugh because my wife is, she'll leave some clothes around on the bedroom floor, and it's something that bothers me at some level. But and I used to maybe internalize a little bit, but I realize it's not. It's just sometimes the way she does. We get busy, things happen. I don't personalize it anymore, and I don't make it like she doesn't care about me when she doesn't pick that up or something. So I'm able to forgive that a little bit more. But yeah, that's the thing is if we're getting triggered emotionally at a high level over something that seems, that should be immaterial, or certainly not that big a deal, that's probably a core wound that's being triggered. So it's something to be conscious of and aware of. And then number four is we're going to deal with our boundaries. How do I set boundaries? A lot of times anxious preoccupieds, we're boundaryless. We don't care about any boundaries. Just as long as we're together and relationship is okay, you can walk on me. I'm a doormat. I'll do whatever. Right. So, and on the flip side, sometimes dismissive avoidance may have extreme boundaries, something that's not even really healthy or good on that side. But we have to discover what are good, healthy boundaries. How do we talk about those? How do we set those? How do we convey those to our partners? Make sure that people are kind of adhering to our boundary a little bit. I always like to say that the boundaries are, to me, are like the fence around the house, and we're the house. The fence protects the house, and so learning how to set the proper boundaries allows us to have the right situations come into our lives a little bit better. So boundaries are very important. Number five is communication. How do we communicate in a way that's actually helpful and really moves the needle? I will talk about real quick. And before, my wife would try to have conversations with me, and I was always listening to defend myself. Why? Because I have a core wound of abandonment, not good enough. All these other core wounds were being triggered. So when she would try to, healthily criticize me or something, or discuss something that was important, I was just looking to, make sure that she knew that I was perfect. I was okay. She's wrong. And she would always say, like, "You're not listening to me." And I would always be like, "Of course I'm listening." Like, I was listening to defend myself, though I wasn't listening to understand her. And that's a huge difference. And we do that a lot differently now. We both know how to kind of, when the other person's communicating, we both stop, listen to the other person, and now we're listening to understand. And I really love this woman. I want to know what's on her heart. I want to understand what she's thinking, what she's going through, right? So I want to know her. And the only way I could really do that is to stop and listen to her when she's expressing some of these things. So that was huge. Game changer for us, big one. And last but not least is our behaviors. How do I, begin to change my behaviors and act in a way that really is more healthy, more becoming of a good dad, good husband, good person,
Mhm.
and just learning those behaviors that can actually change my life in a way that, again, is more positive. Those six pillars to me were just game changers. And when you can see, to me, I can see each one and I can work on each one. I can say, oh boy, I know I'm struggling with my communication. That's something I need to work on. Or, you know what, boundaries. I need to learn more about boundaries. Like, what are those things? And I can study that and learn a little bit about those boundaries. And I just like the idea that I can kind of work on each one a little bit at a time, move the needle a little bit here, a little bit there. And as I move the needle with each one, I'm just getting better and better. I'm getting a lot more of those tools in my tool belt now. So when situations arise, I'm able to kind of, deal with that relationship in a much healthier way. I pull out this tool for this situation. I pull out maybe a different tool for a different situation. And now I have, again, ways to kind of get through a relationship that I never knew were possible. I didn't have these tools before. So I was just kind of winging it. Right. And I no longer have to wing it. I always talk about a car. If your car is breaking down and you were a mechanic, you had all the right tools, you knew how to fix the car and everything, you wouldn't worry about that car breaking down too much. You'd be okay with that. But if you weren't a mechanic like me, a lot of us aren't mechanics. We don't know how to fix the car. We don't have the tools to fix the car. And so the car starts breaking down. We get a little anxious. We get a little nervous about that. What do we do? Right. But if all of a sudden that mechanic taught you how to fix the car, taught you all the things that you need to know about the car, and all of a sudden gave you the tools necessary to fix the car, if your car started breaking down a little bit, you'd feel a lot more secure about that. You wouldn't have to worry so much. You know how to navigate that. And that's a pretty good thing. And that's the way I feel like in relationships, a lot of times relationships fall apart, not because we don't love each other. It's just that we don't have the tools and the knowledge necessary to keep it together. And that's the important thing is we have to learn those things in order to kind of, be the good relationship mechanic, if you will.
Each one of those pillars foundationally requires presence, mindfulness, self reflection, space, and inquiry, none of which, including the broader conversation of relationship, is taught to us, especially when we come from dysfunctional families. And I think families, almost by definition, are dysfunctional. But that being said, um, this knowledge that you have, this um, model, if you will, that you work with the integrated attachment theory, is the toolbox. And we have to commit to understanding the tools and their function and then committing to using them. This isn't a pill. It doesn't just happen. We can't just go, okay, I'm going to change and not do the work. And I think for many of the listeners that are here, that are hearing this podcast, lack the mindful peace because they are so overwhelmed, that they're so in the middle of the chaos that comes with the conflict. Think about, and if you want to talk about it a little bit, Bryan, the chaos that came with the restraining order, the dysfunction and the blow up that happened in your world with you, with your kids, with your wife, that turned your world upside down. And without you stumbling across this, without you dedicating yourself to this, without offering this to your wife for exploration and her willingness to engage in that process, that none of this would have happened.
Yeah. Yeah, that's first thing was the willingness to do anything, and the humbleness that I had to do through this experience is just humble myself and be willing to do whatever it takes to kind of get this information and to begin to implement it into my life. I didn't want to go through this pain anymore. I didn't want to go through another breakup, another
God,
situation.
no.
It's
Right?
just the most painful. I always say there's nothing more painful in this world than losing the person you love simply because you don't have the tools necessary to keep them. So again, my wife and I love them.
Or that they don't have the tools
Yeah,
to bring it together.
yeah, no, absolutely. Both sides, of course, yes.
Right.
But at least I talk from my side because I can't control their side. I can only control mine. So so I'm just talking about me. I don't have the tools necessary, and so that's just a very painful realization. But the great news is that to me, I found tools that work and begin to really change and move the needle. And that was exciting to me. That to me is like, wow, I feel like I just hit the jackpot, right? All of a sudden I've read books in the past, some of the old school stuff growing up, and I'd go through a breakup and I'd read a book, Men Are From Mars, whatever, Venus and stuff, but to me there's a treasure trove of information out here now that I think we didn't even have access to, 30,
No.
40 years ago. On podcasts like your own, right? Things like this that you can jump on and listen to great conversations and get some really good knowledge and some good wisdom where people are like, wow, that is something I want to delve into, maybe learn a little bit more about and start to see the answers that work for you. I always say find what works for you. I'd like to think that the integrated attachment theory can work for almost anybody, but if it doesn't work for you, there is a modality out there that will work for you. And that's
Mhm.
what I want to make sure, that there is something that will move the needle for you. We just have to find it. But yeah, sometimes the breakup, sometimes the heartache, the craziness, we do get stuck in it until maybe it finally does end. And that it's when it ends that we get that space and that time, and all of a sudden that's when we can reflect. That's when we can start to go, oh, wow, wait a second. Now I see some of the things I was doing this way. And I can see my partner was acting this way because of this reason. And we start to put that puzzle together a little bit. And that clarity that can come from that is a game changer. So first thing is the recognition that there's a problem, and the willingness to say, okay, now let's explore that. Let's look for that and figure that out so we can now put this puzzle back together in a way that actually we can see the picture again. And it's a beautiful, sometimes picture, a beautiful puzzle when we put it together. It just looks like a bunch of pieces scattered on the table when we don't know what it looks like. But when we start to put it all together,
Right.
little piece at a time, it starts to come together. You go, oh, wow, that's looking pretty cool. And it really can paint a really beautiful portrait. So I truly believe that sometimes breakups, sometimes the heartache, sometimes the pain, unfortunately, as sad as it is to have to go through that, I think it's part of the recipe for most of us, unfortunately, to get to the other side. And when done properly, yeah, it's a true blessing. It's not meant to hurt us. It's not meant to, destroy us. It's meant to actually strengthen us, give us more knowledge, more wisdom, and actually bless us on the other side of that. So I look at it totally different than I ever used to before.
Right. So when the breakup happens,
Yeah.
it creates space for us to experiment in doing it differently the next time. I know, I know for me, um, it was this, when I enter into a relationship, there'd be a red flag that would come up. And I go, I've seen this before, and I'm not going anywhere near that. But instead, because knowing that that attachment piece was triggered over here, what would happen if I just settled in and didn't grab a hold of that and chase it? And in my current relationship, which I feel is pretty damn healthy, some of these triggers are on both sides of this. But in the early days, by me not engaging in the normal back and forth of the what these attachment styles trigger,
Right.
my partner settled, and that trigger would settle, and it was like, oh, you're not doing it this way. Oh, what's happening here? And there became this inquiry about, if I don't engage in that, then I don't create that. Because so much of what we do in these arenas is really our behavior creating that or triggering that in the other. And when we learn how to do that differently, it doesn't get triggered, they get settled, and then we get to move towards, whether we ever fully get there or not, but we get to move towards that secure, attached sense that there's something here that I can trust, right?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So I always say two is better than one, but one is better than none. And so
Right.
one person doing the work on this and changing the way they do things can absolutely change the dynamic of that relationship. And
Hmm.
it can often bring the other person along into a healthier spot. Now, if as you're dating that person, especially in the dating stage, if you're doing things pretty healthily and that person is really not coming along at all, that's probably a relationship that maybe needs to end
Next.
before you go too far down the rabbit hole, right? So you're
Right.
able to kind of, that's where proper dating and vetting sometimes in relationships comes in. And that's another issue. Another thing that I wish people could learn better is how to really date from the start and do it differently and better, and definitely kind of look for the correct partner so we don't find ourselves in, again, some of these unhealthy situations. But yeah, no, one person doing it properly and really kind of behaving in a way that's secure, is going to help the other person absolutely stabilize more and come along with us. So I always say, like, if your partner doesn't want to do the work, don't worry about it. It's not about them. It's always about us doing the work. It's about you doing the work. Because if your partner does the work and you don't do the work, then that's not going to be very good for you. They're going to find you're the one that's dragging the relationship down, and vice versa. But if you put yourself in a position where you know how to do this stuff, you're more emotionally stable, you've got good relationship skills now, and you're able to kind of have a good, healthy relationship, chances are your partner will come along with you with that. And if they don't, and that relationship ends, you're going to find yourself in a much healthier position to have a good relationship with somebody. And like I always say, sometimes I was fortunate. In my case, it was my wife coming back to me, but I had let it go to the point where even if it wasn't her coming back, I was okay with that. I was okay if it wasn't coming back. And had she not done the work, and had we not made some changes and she did come back, I wouldn't have been that interested. I would have still kind of been okay with moving on because I was getting better. I was healing. I was moving forward, and I wanted a partner that was going to meet me in where I was in that regard. So I just say you can't lose if you do the work. Just do the
Right.
work, and you're just gonna, yeah, you can't lose. Yeah.
Models and engagement and models. And this is one of the things that I like to bring around in these podcasts because I've had some really good guests on here with really good information and good models. And to listen to this information is going to resonate to some people. And when you hear that bell go off, engage, step in, study it, inquire about it, do the work with it. Because without that engagement, without that, I'm going to listen to 1,000 podcasts, I'm going to look at 1,000 different pieces, you're not going to get anywhere. When the bell rings and it feels congruent with you, move on it. It might not even be with the person that lit that candle for you. It might be with somebody else, but there's something here that's resonating. It's time to step in and engage in the process, not just read the book, not just listen to the podcast, not just go on Instagram and listen to the ad nauseum little stuff that's going on, but set time. It's worth it. And there's nothing more worth doing than this for yourselves and your children. Because I think if otherwise, we're just wasting time.
Yeah, people say that knowledge is power. That's not really true. It's applied knowledge is power, right? So it's one thing to know something, but it's another thing to actually implement it. And so I think
Yeah,
knowledge is the beginning of power. Certainly, that's a great step. But until we actually put it into practice, it doesn't really change our lives. And so,
right.
I love that. You're so right. Begin to engage, begin to actually take a step and become a doer of this stuff, not just a learner of this stuff, if you
Yeah.
will. We have to really implement it. That's what makes a difference.
Knowledge only becomes wisdom when it's applied.
That's it.
Right.
That's it. I like that. It's
Cool.
like the next level. Yeah. Yeah.
So, how can people get in touch with you?
For me, yeah,
How
if
can
you
they?
want to, yeah, if you want to get in touch with me, I'd love to hear your story, love to chat with you. You can go to my website, myrelationshipfail.com, myrelationshipfail.com. You can learn a little bit about attachment styles. You can take an attachment quiz, learn what your attachment style is a little bit. Free to do that, fun to do that. But don't get caught up on that. But it's a good thing to kind of learn. Uh, I always challenge everybody from there. Join the personal development school, which is Tyson Gibson School, through my website. When you do that, you're going to get a great price, all that good stuff. And I also want to give you a free session with me. I want to give you a 60-minute relationship strategy session. I want to hear your story. I want to hear where you're at. I want to hear what's going on. And I want to see if I can help you move the needle a little bit and point you in the right direction and start getting some answers that can really help you move it forward. Completely free. I don't care if you ever decide to work with me or not. I don't care. It's just something I love to do. And I love to, I'm on a mission to just to help as many people have better relationships as possible. That's my goal for the rest of my life till the day I die. I just want to save as many relationships as possible. So if I can help you in any way, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to meet you.
Okay. And I'm going to close this out if you're ready. If there's anything else that you want to add here that you feel that we've missed, Bryan, we can bring that in. But I also want to, as we close this out, there may be, and Masi's going to let us know here shortly, if there's people that are listening currently live that have questions for us, and that you can field some of that for them if you'd like.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do the best I can. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, for sure.
So let me open the chat here. We do have some chat, studio chat. We got 3 people in here.
In the meantime, I'll say this while you're looking for that. If you come across a question, great. If not, I want to talk to anybody who's right now is hurting, who's dealing with a breakup, who's really in a bad spot. I want you to know that everything's going to be okay. I truly believe that. I truly believe that this is a chance for you to kind of learn, grow, change. It's all going to be okay if you do the work, if you take this opportunity to actually make changes. Because obviously, if the relationship is struggling at this point, it's probably, there's some things going on here that have brought it to this point. And so even if you do stay together, you want to stay together in a healthy, good way. And so if you're struggling in a relationship, please know that it's going to be okay. Catch your breath. If you're in what's called no contact period, sometimes no contact is the best thing for a relationship. You can get clarity. Your partner can get clarity. You guys can figure out what's best for you, and your partner gets to figure out what's best for them. And sometimes you decide to choose each other again, like my wife and I did, where it's like, hey, my wife can walk away, but she chooses not to. She wants to be with me. Same here. We now choose each other in a healthy way. We know that we can move on with our lives. We're free to do that, but we choose each other because we love each other. And so I truly feel that no contact, a breakup, if you will, I always say they call it a breakup, not a breakdown, because we're going to level up through that time. We are going to break up, not break down. And so a breakup period is a time to level up. And if you do that and take that time to do that, it can be with the partner you're with today, or it could be with somebody new. But either way, it's going to be to bless you, not to hurt you. So just wanted to throw that
Awesome.
out there for as we're waiting. If there are any questions, like I said, happy to kind of answer those. But
Well,
I
it
always
looks
like
like we've got nobody in right now. So let's go ahead and close this out, everybody. This has been episode 320. Why your breakup could be the best thing that ever happened. Take care, everybody. Thank you for coming in, listening to this. We hope to see you on our next podcast. And thanks for joining me, Bryan. This has been a good conversation.
Brooke, it's been a pleasure and it's an honor to share this time with you. And thank you so much for allowing me to share my story and everything that we talked about today. I'm really blessed. Thank you so much, Brooke.